Of tonight's subject. The little girl was told by her mother about all of the family problems. Jimmy had the mumps, and Susie has the measles, and Grandma had broken her leg, and she was told to pray, and she said, "Dear God, please take care of yourself, because if anything happens to you, we'll all be in the soup." But the subject is somewhat related to that. It's on God is Dead. I heard of one man who was an atheist for a year, and then he gave it up because there were no holidays. We'll try to explain to you this much discussed subject. God is dead. Now, there are two ways in which this can be understood. God is dead. It can be understood one way. I don't know how I happened to write that. My angel, leave it there, angel. The name God is dead. That is one sense in which it is used. In other words, the name God has no significance today. The other meaning of the phrase God is dead is that the reality of God is dead. In other words, God himself is dead. Here it's only the name. Now, this is one of the very popular ideas today. Why is the name of God meaningless? I will give you their argument without going into the names of the philosophers. I'll not mention any of the popular American ones because, listen, their theory won't be known in 10 years from now. This telecast would outlast their theory. Their theory and idea is this. We live in a technological scientific age in which we're able to verify and to prove any statement that we make. There is therefore nothing that is true or false. Words are only meaningful or meaningless. Now, applying this verification principle, namely, if a name cannot be verified in experience, it is useless. They say the name God has no meaning in our modern civilization, in our secular age. The name Father has no meaning. God is love, is meaningless. Well, why then do people continue to use the word? Well, their answer is this. They use a Dutch word, and they say that the word God is what they call a blik, B-L-I-K. A blik is a Dutch word meaning a view. It isn't something that really exists. Now, that's their idea. What value has it? The first objection that I have to it is that it's not modern. It's medieval, it's antiquated, it's behind the times. It does not fit into our technological, secular civilization. Many philosophers use expressions and ideas because they do not know what is old. Do you know that this theory, that names do not apply to reality, goes back to a certain individual who lived in the 11th century? His name was Roscellinus. Roscellinus says all names are meaningless. They do not apply to reality. He had a pupil in his class by the name of Peter Abelard. As soon as you hear Peter Abelard, you think of Eloise, don't you? Well, Peter Abelard did something else besides thinking about Eloise. Peter Abelard had a donkey, and he rode his donkey all over Europe, refuting this crazy idea that names are meaningless. And thank heavens, thanks to Peter Abelard, now the theory was completely buried until some of our Americans dug it up again. So our first difficulty with it is that it's unmodern, it's unbecoming. We finished it 1,000 years ago. Why drag it up again? Then a second difficulty with it is that this idea that we have to do away with God because he has no meaning fails to make a distinction between the knowledge that we have of objects and the knowledge we have of persons. When they say that words are meaningful only when they can be scientifically verified, they are referring to things. They are referring to objects. But there's another kind of knowledge which does not have the same kind of scientific verification, and that is the knowledge and the love of persons, one for another. For example, suppose one of these God is dead philosophers is asked by his wife, "Do you love me?" Well, he will say, "Well, I let you use my credit card, don't I? I fixed 6 fenders for you last week. I paid for 14 permanents." And she might say, "Listen, you haven't answered my question. Do you love me?" What was he doing? He was translating his love in terms of behavior that could be measured and verified scientifically. That wasn't the kind of question she asked. And so there's another kind of knowledge than mere scientific knowledge. And another indication of it is I really did a bit of detective work, and I tried to find out what one of these God is dead philosophers called his wife and what she called him. What were their pet names? And I found out. I can't tell you which philosopher it is. Maybe you can figure it out. He called his wife Sugar. She called him Diabetes. He called her Sugar because she was so sweet. And she called him Diabetes because he was around sweetness so much he became diabetic. Now, let us scientifically verify the names that they have for one another. Does she really exist? Can he prove that she is Sugar? Can she prove that he's diabetic? He's not diabetic. Is his wife only a blick? Is he only a blick? Can't you see that when people commune with one another, they have a way of speaking and knowing that is quite beyond an IBM computer? Just suppose we said to these philosophers who say the name God is meaningless, suppose we said, 6 of you are in a room, and we challenged you, can you prove that you are legitimate sons of your mother and father? Could they prove it then and there? They could not. Would they become angry? They certainly would. And they would say, "How dare you say that? I know my parents know me. I love my parents love me." Well, can't I say the same thing about God? I don't need to prove God, he proves me. I know God and I'm known by God. I love God and I'm loved by God. And I have that experience. And so there are other ways, therefore, of knowing than those that we have mentioned. But when we find this kind of philosophy creeping up, what is called linguistic analysis, the analysis of words, or analytic philosophy, as I read their books, and I've read them all, do you know, they remind me of something. And this is what they remind me of. First of all, they say we live in a technological age. We must live in a secular city. Our technology can bring us to the moon. We're proud of what we can do. And God does not fit our times. That's their first idea. Secondly, there is a fear. Fear of the annihilation of man. And then finally, there's the confusion of language. They do not understand what one another is saying, particularly in the realm of philosophy and theology. Reminds me of the Tower of Babel. When men in those days said, proud of their technological skill, let us build a tower to the very heavens. Let us build a city, a secular city. Why? Because they were fearful of being dispersed across the earth, and their pride and their fear brought them confusion of tongues. This is the first idea, that the name God is dead. Now, there's the other side. The other side is the reality of God is dead. Here we come to an important point. These are real atheists who say that. This kind of atheism is not born of the intellect. It is born of the will. They will that God does not exist. Now to give you some proofs. Heidegger, the great German philosopher, said, if it could be mathematically proven beyond all doubt that God existed, I should still deny his existence because it would set a limit to my freedom. Nietzsche, the high priest of all atheism and the one who started the expression God is dead, he died in the year 1900. Nietzsche said at 14 he had a vision of the splendor of God. He wrote poems about the crucifixion. He said, "Oh Lord, what do you ask of me? All of me? I give myself entirely. Life is a cross, and the cross is my life." And then Nietzsche said, we cannot make room for my ego and for the Superman and the catastrophe and the chaos that is to come through the Superman if I do not deny God. André Gide, great French atheist, has a poem about a minister, takes into his home a young girl, falls in love with her later on, gives up his faith, becomes an atheist and a militant atheist. And why? Simply because he said, I cannot stand having the sensual love of mine ruined by the thought of a God. You see, he willed not to have a God. Sartre, I denied God because he set a limit to my amours. Kirillov, and one of the characters in Dostoevsky, said, I will commit suicide because if I die, God is master of my life. See, the atheist admitted that. But he said, if I kill myself, then I am the master. And an American writer said, God stands in the way of my homosexuality. That is why we must proclaim that God is dead. Now, this is the other side of it. What kind of a world would they produce? I'm going to read two testimonies of a world without God, a world in which God is dead. One is a testimony of Jean Paul Richter, who wrote a little-known novel in 1796, in which he woke up, imagined himself rather dreaming on a hillside, and he saw the dead round about, and the dead said, "Where is God?" No answer came back. He saw a corpse in the church, and the arms folded together in prayer, and then they fell apart and fell on the ground because prayer was useless. And then children spoke, and they said, as Christ appeared over the main altar, "Where is Christ?" And Christ answered with tears streaming down his cheek, "We're orphans, all. You and I. We have no father. I am alone." And then he woke up from his dream and prayed. But the man who started God is dead, Nietzsche, tells us what the world is like without God and what it will become. Nietzsche was a great pianist, friend of Richard Wagner. One day, seated at his piano, he stopped playing, touching the pianos with his fingertips, and he began pounding the keys with his elbows, shouting and shrieking against the person of God and against Christ. And he went mad. Mad. And in one of his books, he makes a madman tell the world there is no God. And this is what Nietzsche wrote. This is the world in which God is dead. Have you not heard of a madman who lit a lantern at noonday, ran to the marketplace and cried unceasingly, "I am looking for God"? And since there happened to be many there standing who did not believe in God, he aroused great laughter. "Is he lost?" said one. "Or gone astray?" said another. "Maybe he's afraid of us." So they laughed and they shouted. And the madman leaped in their midst and pierced them with his glance. "Where is he gone?" he cried. "I will tell you. We have slain him. You and I. We are his murderers. How did we do it? How could we drink up the sea? Who gave us a sponge to wipe off the horizon? Are we not now wandering through an infinite nothingness? Is empty space not breathing upon us now? It's colder now. Night is coming, and ever more night. We hear the noise of the gravediggers as they bury God. We smell God decaying. God is dead, and we have slain him. How shall we console ourselves, chief of all murderers? The holiest and most powerful this world has ever possessed has ebbed its blood away beneath our fingers. Who can make us clean? What sacred rites will we have to invent? Is not the greatness of this deed too great for us? We will have to become gods. Now he predicts the catastrophe that is to come. He said, I know his name, but I shall not mention his name. The catastrophe that will come upon a godless world. At last, he threw his lantern on the ground, and so that it broke in pieces and went out. He said, I've come too early. Too early. That monstrous catastrophe that is to fall upon the world is not yet upon us. This is the way the greatest of all the atheists speaks of the world that is to come, the world in which God is dead. Dostoevsky, who knew atheism well because he predicted it coming into Russia, said that humanity has two ages. One age is from the gorilla to the death of God. The other age is from the death of God to the annihilation of man by a catastrophe. Can it be that there is a moment when we have, the moment that we have invented the atomic bomb is also the moment when we're in danger of annihilating ourselves? I tell you, these men have not convinced me that there is no God, but they have convinced me of one thing. They have convinced me that there is a devil.
Bishop Sheen will return in a moment.
People of all faiths recognize Bishop Fulton J. Sheen as one of the greatest communicators of the 20th century. He was born in El Paso, Illinois, in May of 1896. As a young boy, he knew he wanted to be a priest. He served as an altar boy at St. Mary's Cathedral in Peoria, Illinois. At St. Viator College, his education and debating skills taught him the skills he used throughout his life. His unique ability at being natural and at ease in front of any audience was noted early in his ministry. He was ordained in 1919 and went on to become one of the best-known.
I can see that you know the creed. A few years ago, I was down south, and I was passing along a road where there were a number of prisoners working from a nearby penitentiary. And they were doing that sort of thing which prisoners are so wont to do, namely pound big rocks until they become little rocks. And I watched them for a while, and I said to them, I wish I could do with hearts what you do with rocks. One of them said, did you ever try working on your knees? I do not know how many Americans there are who work on their knees. The American loves speed. You know, he is the only one in the world who ever thought of inventing a rocking chair, because you can go places at the same time you're resting. We thought possibly it might be well for the American audience to hear something about taking a little rest in order to contact power for one's soul. Have you ever noticed that hardly anything in this world lives by itself? Even coal needs oxygen to burn. Fish need water. Birds need the air. Plants are in communion with the sun, which is 92 million miles away from the earth. And the animals, they need contact with the chemical order, with the sun, with plant life. And man's mind. Man's mind is just like this blackboard. It has nothing on it when we're born. And it's only through contact with the outside world, by taking in something through the senses, that we ever get ideas. Therefore, we are not creators of energy. We are merely transformers of energy. And it's a simple lesson in dynamism. All the power that we expend is due to power that we take in. Now, should not our soul have some energy? It needs its environment, too. And it needs an environment of perfect life and truth and love and beauty and goodness and holiness. And that environment is God. And how do we contact that energy? We contact it by prayer. There are some people in the world who are blind. They are dead to the great environment of sound. For example, the laughter of a child, the sigh of a waterfall. There are others in the world who are dead. They're dead to the environment, rather blind. They're dead to the great environment of a sunset, the first spring flower. Then there are others who are deity blind. They never contact this great thesaurus and treasure of energy and power that there is above us. And the result is that they're always breathing in the same air that they breathe out. That is why an atheist has well been defined as a man who has no invisible means of support. One of the reasons why we're unhappy in this world is because, actually, our bodies are going too fast. This is a body. This is the body of a man in motion. And here's the soul of the man. Now, our bodies are going so fast that our poor souls haven't got time to catch up with us. And the result is that we've lost all contact with this energy that could give us peace and happiness. I'll let my little angel erase that now. You know, politicians talk through their hats, but my angel talks through his halo. One of the great differences between the contacts of energy for our body and the contact of energy for our mind is this, that the contact of energy for the body is automatic. It's much more easier for us to breathe than it is to hold our breath. You know about the little boy who said, if you don't give me that candy, I'll hold my breath till I get red in the face. But contact with God through prayer is conditional. It's free. It's not forced upon us. And we receive certain gifts only on condition that we ask for them. For example, at this particular moment, they're floating through this theater. There's music. There's the comedy of Milton Berle. There are political discussions. There are soap operas. And you're not getting a one of them. Why? Well, because you're not tuned in. So, too, there's all kinds of divine energy that is floating through this world. Many are not receiving it because they have not willed to tune in, and they miss it. There are millions and millions of favors hanging from heaven on silken cords. And prayer is the sword that cuts them. Ask, you shall receive, but we have to ask. Seek, and you shall find. You have to seek. Knock, and it shall be opened unto you. But you have to knock. Did you ever see that painting of Holman Hunt? It's a picture of our blessed Lord at an ivy-covered door. He has a lantern in his hand. He's knocking at the door. Holman Hunt was criticized for that picture. And it was said that he had no latch on the outside of the door. Holman Hunt said, of course not. The latch is on the inside. We alone open it. That's our opportunity, but we have to ask. So we have to put ourselves in this environment of divine life, and we do that by this reactive prayer. See what a difference it makes. Now here, this is a little waif, a little orphan, homeless girl, maybe someplace in Europe. Here she is on the street, and I signify the street. This is a lamppost. To an alcoholic, that looks like the Saturday Evening Post. Now, here's another little girl in a very happy home. This is a house, a home. And this is a transparent home. And here's our little girl in here, very, very happy, and her father and her mother and so on in the house. This little girl does not have food, clothing, shelter, and affection. This little girl has all of those things. And why? Because this girl here is in an environment of love, which this one is not. Now, there are many people in the world who do not place themselves in this environment of love and power and beauty and strength, and the result is that they do not have the blessings that others have. They're like this poor little waif. Take, for example, those who are raising families. They say, oh, well, I could not afford to send my child to college. And they're judging themselves solely by the bank account. But if they put themselves in the environment of divine love every now and then they would receive blessings which presently they are denied. You do not trust those who do not trust you. Just as soon as you trust, love people, and show affection, they begin to give you favors and blessings. So it is with the good Lord. Will you say you have distractions? Well, St. Bernard had a friend once who told him that he never had distractions in prayer. St. Bernard said, I always have them. They were out horseback riding. St. Bernard said, I tell you what I will do. I will give you this horse if you can say the Our Father without distraction. Now get off your horse and say the Our Father. So he got up to the words, give us this day our daily bread. He looked up at St. Bernard and he said, can I have the saddle too? Now we'll speak of various kinds and forms of prayer by which we contact this energy. One would be petition. Another would be something that is very seldom understood, namely worship. And the third would be the prayer of action. First of all, petition. Petition is asking favors. I know of a sick man who was brought into a hospital once, and he hadn't prayed for about 30 years, and he said to the good nun in charge, he said, I haven't prayed for 30 years, sister, pray for me. She says, pray for yourself. She says, sometimes a strange voice is the one most quickly heard. Now we should ask Almighty God for favors, and He will give them to us, provided they are best for our soul as well as for our body. But we must not think that when we ask for anything, we are trying to change the will of God. That is not prayer, petition, or any other kind of prayer. Here's a father in a family. He has a son whom he wishes to send to college. During high school days, the boy becomes recalcitrant, disobedient, steals, has a police record, becomes a juvenile delinquent. He's sent to a reform school. Has the father changed his will about sending him to college? No, the father still wills it. But why doesn't the boy go to college then if the father wills it? because the boy has not fulfilled those conditions which were necessary for the father giving him a college education. Prayer then, instead of changing the will of God, actually places us in that environment which makes it possible for God to give us things that otherwise it would be impossible to give. Now, for example, if my father had a Stradivarius violin, which he didn't have, he might have wished that I would have been a violinist or a musician. Did you ever hear me sing? Well, with all the good intentions of the world, there'd be no point in giving me a Stradivarius violin. Simply not deserving of that particular kind of gift. While petition is a legitimate form of prayer, it is not the full nature of prayer. But let me tell you, however, of a particular example of petition. Normally, priests are ordained about at the age of 24. I was mentally retarded. I was ordained at 24, but they sent me to school for 5 more years. So here I was studying at the University of Louvain in Belgium until I was 29 years of age. Those 6 years in the 3rd grade sure set me back. And I was studying studying philosophy at the University of Louvain. And I wanted to go to Lourdes. You know Lourdes. You saw the movie, maybe, The Song of Bernadette, read Werfel's book. Those of you who have the faith know Lourdes very well. And I wished to go to Lourdes and celebrate the 5th anniversary of my ordination. I had just enough money to go to Lourdes, but not enough to live on once I arrived. And I asked my brother, who was studying medicine at the University of Louvain, if... I'll not make a plug now about him, where he is or where his office is, anything of that kind. He'll shoot me for it. He missed a great opportunity, but we'll let it pass. So he was studying medicine at the University of Louvain, and I asked him if he had any money. He was a typical university student, too. And I said, well, if I have faith enough to go to Lourdes to celebrate the 5th anniversary of my ordination, it's up to the Blessed Mother to get me out. So I went to Lourdes. I arrived broke, on dish. And I decided that if the Blessed Mother was going to pay my hotel bill, she could just as well pay a big one as a little one. So I went to the best hotel in Lourdes. It was a 4th-rate hotel by our standards, but at any rate, it was the best there. 6th day I got my bill. I had visions of gendarmes, French police, jails. I stuck it out because the novena was 9 days of prayer. Waiting for the 9th day, I went down in the morning, nothing happened. The 9th noon, nothing happened. The 9th evening, nothing happened, and it was serious. So I thought I'd give the Blessed Mother another chance. I went down to the grotto about 10:30. As I was saying the rosary, a portly gentleman tapped me on the shoulder. He said, are you an American priest? Yes. You speak French? Yes. You know Paris? Yes. Well, I'm Mr. So-and-so of New York. This is my son, my daughter, my wife. So we walked back to the hotel together, and he said, we want you to come to Paris with us and tomorrow and talk French for us. He said, have you paid your hotel bill yet? That was the most interesting question I ever heard. So I out-fumbled him for the bill. One of those not too rare moments in life where the grasp does not exceed the reach. And we went to Paris, stayed there a week with him, and he said at the end of the week, I will give you my address in New York. Said you can call on us when you come back. Do you mind taking it at the bottom of a check? And I said, not particularly. So I arrived back in Louvain with much more than I started with. Then when I came back to America, we went back again to Lourdes 2 times together to thank the Blessed Mother for introducing us one to another. Now, the moral of this story is for you people that live in Peoria not to come to the Waldorf and expect the Blessed Mother to pay bills there. But pray for something worthwhile spiritually and you will receive it. And as Dr. Alexis Carroll says, great strength for your mind, power for your body. He calls it physical stamina, better understanding of the world, and then, of course, a great inner peace because you're in contact with all of this infinite power and mercy and love. Now, in addition to petition, there's also worship. People can't understand worship or praise. They said, what is God who wants praise? Is he a kind of a potentate sitting on a throne, very unhappy and miserable when we do not pay him some adulation? No, God does not need praise. We need it. Many an American home this spring, little girls about 3 and 4 years of age are going out into the garden, and they're going to bring in from the garden bouquets and bunches of dandelions, and they're going to give them to the mother. And it's going to be a little difficulty for the mother. She'll have to get a vase for dandelions, vases for flowers. She has to get a vase for the dandelions, and she has to put them in the parlor. She expresses gratitude to the child. Does the mother need the dandelions? She doesn't need them. Does the child need to give them? Certainly. Why? Because the child is being trained in love and kindness and mercy and goodness. That's why the child has to give them. Otherwise, she would be wanting in affection, wanting in obedience. God does not need our praise. We need it. What is worship? Worship is something that's worthful. We're enthusiastic about an athlete. We praise him. I wonder if husbands ever praise wives if they've been married for 18 years. Do you know that in 18 years, your wife has prepared 19,710 meals? And then, now, for example, at the end of this television program, there's going to be a great burst of applause. And why? Why will there be a great burst of applause? It is because you will have heard something that was transcendently superior. You will have heard something that was beyond all competition. You will have heard something the like of which is not given on any other television program. You will have heard something that delights every father in the United States, that thrills every mother, that pleases every child, namely a commercial about an Admiral refrigerator. Oh, I only have 1 minute, 2 minutes to talk to you about action. But every little action that we have can be turned into a prayer. For example, the men working these booms, lights, cameras, angels, stenographers, taxi drivers, sword diggers, everything. Everything can be made a prayer, provided we offer it up in the name of the good Lord. That's praying while we work. Down in the gutter of a city street, there's a drop of water, soiled, and dirty and stagnant. Way up in the heavens,
Sheen.